Welcome to the Women and Wealth podcast with Esther Szabo. Esther is a respected leader in the field of personal financial advice with over 25 years of experience. After going through her own significant and challenging life-changing events, she overcame fear and self-doubt to launch her own successful advisory firm. Now Esther is ready to share her practical and personal experiences to help other women clear their hurdles and brave life's transitions. In this way, she inspires women to lead fulfilling and confident lives.
Hello and welcome to Women in Wealth with Esther Szabo from Gates Pass Advisors. I'm really excited. Today, Esther has a special guest, and that is Ellen Cookman. Ellen is a certified specialist in estate planning, trust, and probate law. After receiving her law degree from UC Berkeley School of Law, Ellen's career path took a few turns before finding the right legal niche for her. She is passionate about helping families of all shapes and sizes plan for the future. Ellen has received many accolades, most recently in 2020 being recognized as a Northern California super lawyer. She is here to talk about her particular specialty in the area of estate planning for children with special needs. Esther, wow, Ellen sounds like a fantastic guest. How did you get her to come to the show?
Oh, I had sent all sorts of bribes and all sorts of things.
Awesome.
No, it's been great to get to know Ellen, and I really appreciate working with her and having her as one of our resources. So, Ellen, thank you so much for coming on with us today.
Oh, I'm so glad to join you.
Well, we're going to just jump right in here. And I do know that your career took some turns, and I'm always interested to hear what brought you to this line of work.
Oh, you bet. Yeah, it is interesting when you look back. And so I was at a big firm at Morrison & Foerster for 3 years. And while it's a wonderful firm, I did litigation, which was just awful. And I completely burned out. And I went to teach at a small private school that does full inclusion of typical and special needs kids. It's called Hope Technology School. So I taught their middle school math for a year. And while I was there, there was an attorney who came to give a presentation to a parent support group at Hope Technology School. And I attended the presentation. It was on special needs trusts. And it really piqued my curiosity. I thought, oh my goodness, I can really help people through this. I remember she was 8 months pregnant. So I thought, oh, okay, you can have a kid in this field. And I was walking out with her and, she had this black BMW. So I thought, okay, you can make money in this field. This all sounds great. This sounds like a really great way to serve my community while being able to support my family. So that was 13 years ago, and I haven't looked back. I love this field. Wow.
And that's so interesting that for those listeners who don't know what litigation is, actually, what that means, can you just drive in a sentence what litigation is? That was so unpleasant.
You bet. And it wasn't just litigation. So I was doing patent and securities litigation. So that's basically when two big companies fight over who got the patent in first, who's infringing on a patent. Mm-hmm. It was a lot of fighting. That's what you imagine, when you see a court case on TV. And then also securities litigation and white collar crime. Let me just say, it wasn't that rewarding. My hat's off to people who do that, but that's, I like helping people, making people happy, and not the contentious stuff.
Yeah, it's really amazing to me that you went from there to being a middle school teacher and that's brought you to us today. I think that's a great, great story. So as we delve in a bit more here on estate planning for those with special needs children, can you talk a little bit about what is a special needs child?
Oh, you bet. So there's a wide range of special needs. There's a lot of different types of disabilities out there. My son, actually, my 8-year-old son, he was diagnosed with high-functioning autism 4 years ago. So that's one form of a disability. It's a developmental disability. Then you also have mental health challenges, which often have an onset further on in life. And then there's physical disabilities. What we're really concerned about in estate planning and special needs planning is really twofold. One of the things is if the child is not able to work and support themselves because of their disability, then they can qualify for certain needs-based public benefits. And we need a special needs trust to protect their benefits and provide a safety net for them. The other thing I think that the special needs community often needs is extra help with managing things. And so they don't need to have a specifically diagnosed disability. I actually help a lot of families where their kid just hasn't really flown the coop. They haven't, they still might be playing video games in the basement or struggling with some undiagnosed mental health challenge. So they'll need extra parenting when they're gone. So special needs trusts really help to provide that management structure. Somebody else is managing the money for the benefit of the disabled person. Mm. So in the estate planning community, our definition of special needs is quite broad, and it really can cover anyone who needs some extra help.
Well, I'm really hearing that wide range, and that is because I think most of us can think about special needs as primarily being children with autism, like your son and my late husband, who is an adult male who was very high on the autism scale too, with very high functioning Asperger's. But it's interesting to bring in issues of disability and those who haven't, sort of bit of failure to thrive, haven't yet launched. Given this wide range, when do you think parents should start doing this advanced planning?
Well, the challenge with estate planning is really our only big deadline is when you die or when you become incapacitated. And we just don't know when that is. If you did know when that is, then let's go gambling together,
Right.
But other than that, we don't know. So really we hope for the best, but we plan for the worst. So I say, okay, what if in 3 months you guys are in a terrible car crash and you're in a coma or you're gone? What kind of planning do you need today? And then I say clients should come back every 3 to 5 years, and we'll just kind of reconvene and see how their children are doing. Did anybody get married or divorced or die or was born? Were there any big purchases? Just to make sure that everything's relevant. So we really plan for today, but then everything is changeable while the parents are still alive. You can always swap things out or amend things. So we really try to plan for the immediate future and then see how things develop.
Yeah. Do you find that too? It's hard for people to start this process because it feels like it is being written in stone, and then it's hard to make such long-term commitments. Do you find that? I have found that when encouraging my clients to, either update or do their estate plan.
All the time, Esther. I find that all the time. And I have to say, I can't judge anyone because it took me being in the field 6 years to do my own trust. So I know this is something that it's really easy to procrastinate, to put on the to-do list at the beginning of the year and then just put it on the next to-do list the next year. And clients often come in and they say, oh, I should have done this 10 years ago. That's a frequently expressed sentiment. So but I think you do the best you can for now. We did our trust and we were a little bit hesitant on the guardianship, and we might need to go back and change that. And that's okay. But I think it's better to have something rather than nothing, especially when I think perfect can be your enemy in this situation. Get something down on paper. Most likely you'll be around to arrange it. And then the other thing that I like to do is put in as much flexibility in the trust to take account for changed circumstances. So for example, with my son, he's pretty high functioning. I think he's going to be able to work and support himself in the future. He'll probably be like all the other engineers around here with, social
Right.
skills that might be hurting a little bit, but they do fine career-wise, right?
Right.
But I don't know. So that kind of
Yeah.
describes the Bay Area, right?
Exactly. That's Silicon Valley in a nutshell right there.
Yeah.
When this was diagnosed with my husband, it was like, oh yeah, another one. It's not unusual.
There you go. Exactly. So what I like doing is putting in flexibility in the revocable trust, the parents' trust, and then also in the child special needs trust. So in the parents' trust, what we can say is, everything goes 50-50 to Joe and to Jill, but Joe's portion, if he's receiving public benefits or if it looks like he'll need them in the future, that portion goes to the special needs trust. But if not, then he receives things the way that Jane does in a lifetime trust or distributing at age 30. So in that way, somebody else, maybe another family member, maybe Jane, can make that determination at the time when it's actually ready to distribute to see, okay, how is Joe really doing? and what do we see for his future? So that, I think that puts some parents really more at ease to know
Mm-hmm.
that they're not making this final determination forever and ever, but we're taking the best stab at it, but then we have other people lined up in the future to be able to help with other determinations.
I love what you're saying about that flexibility and that positivity because it really does go a long way. I find this with planning. People are hesitant to come in for planning, and it's really just charting a course of direction. Where are you going, and how does that look? And let's take a look and see if we can sort of get up on this plateau and see where that's leading you and what your other options are. And there's such fear about, well, I'm going to get pigeonholed into something that I don't want. And I just think that's how our brains can work. But I just
Mhm.
love that you're saying, hey, this is flexible. None of us can predict the future. We're just
Right.
starting where we are now and getting something down in the event of a situation where you're not there to help. And that alone is a
Exactly.
difficult thing. But yeah, you have such a nice manner. How do you help parents with the difficult decisions that they do need to think about? I mean, no one likes to think about death or leaving their
Mm.
children, and they're just things we have to think through. How do you help parents with those decisions?
Well, first, you kind of have to put people at ease, right? Because anybody talking with a lawyer, it doesn't seem like a good thing. Something went wrong, or right, or I'm being
Right.
sued, or so already calling me, there can be a level of anxiety. So I really try to, find some commonalities, help people, just start talking about their family. And I say, okay, well, tell me more about Joe. What would his day kind of look like? Has he ever been able to hold down a job? I have a lot of clients who are older and their children are adults, and they have great hopes that their children will, will improve in their independence. Oh, and I hadn't mentioned, and also in the special needs trust, what we can say is if that child is able to work and support themselves, then it can distribute to a trust like Jane's Trust, or it can become a little bit less restrictive. And I think that parents really want to have hope for their children. You almost feel like you're labeling your kid, or you're just subjecting them to poverty if
Hmm.
somehow you label them as having a disability. I know that actually came up. My husband's brother had expressed to us, oh, don't call Caleb autistic because then he has a label. And
Mm.
but I found that we needed that label to understand what help we needed for him. And I totally
Hmm.
believe in early intervention because it helped Caleb tremendously. He went through PRT therapy, pivotal response therapy.
Thank you.
He got a lot of OT and PT from a really wonderful woman. So, if we hadn't understood what's happening, we really weren't able to find the best course for him. And so that's the other thing that, I try to talk with my parents about, that, or, my clients, that, let us know, even if it sounds a little bit ugly, because we really want to plan appropriately and see what log jams we might encounter. What is the child's relationship with their siblings? Who do they get along with? Have they ever been able to move out of the house before? Do you have ideas about housing? Housing is so hard for the special needs community. If you can imagine, it's so hard to buy a house here in the Bay Area as
Hmm.
a typical person. Now try to imagine getting housing if you don't have any income. So, these are difficult things, and just letting people know it's okay to talk about these things. There's this cultural taboo to talk about death or disability, like you're almost jinxing yourself.
Hmm.
But it's gonna happen.
Yeah,
So,
it's like creating that safe space is what I hear you
mhm.
saying, is creating a safe space like here, with me, let's just put it on the table and just go through it, and just, I can completely validate what you're saying for the parents.
Mhm.
And I think that can be challenging because I have a client right now who he's widowed, and he feels terrible that the grief and survival has really been quite distracting, and he has a son who's now 12 or 13 that has just been diagnosed with different disabilities.
Mm.
Dyslexia being one, another about handwriting, another difficulty with math concepts, and he's struggling also with the guilt, like, oh, if I had been more present, Maybe I could have brought more resources on, and what does this mean for the future? And have you had experience with that where parents feel guilty to just even talk about, gosh, if they had done something differently, this might be different, let alone let's put it on the table that this is a situation.
Oh yeah. I mean, there's all these theories about, is there an increase in the rate of autism? And if there is, what's causing it? So clients come at it from many different perspectives, and it can be really difficult to, come to terms with things. Also, for couples, there's a pretty high rate of divorce in the autism or, just special needs community. And I think that's a lot because it's hard to get on the same page on your child's abilities, on what they need. Sometimes I encounter families where the husband might want a more restrictive trust because they really don't trust the child, and maybe the child's earned that, over different poor decisions. But the mom really wants to think the best of the child, or vice versa. It could be anybody coming at that. So they have to also kind of come to terms with things. So I feel like in my job, I'm 1/3 social worker, 1/3 counselor, and 1/3 attorney. There's a lot. Yeah, there's a lot of really helping people through these difficult issues. I'm not a psychologist. I don't have a degree, but I feel like I just play one on TV,
Well, it's important. I mean, that's what I appreciate about how you work with clients, because you're very active, engaged professional consultant for them in this particular area. And it is so important. If we talk about those needs-based benefits, they can make the difference between housing and not housing, or just support services and not. Is that right?
Oh, that's right. So that's one big question that comes up with my clients. Usually, they have more than a couple million, and they want to leave a good amount to their child, and they wonder, how much do we, what size of our estate would we need to not need a special needs trust? And I just about always recommend to include a special needs trust anyways, because there are certain benefits, even if you're paying out of pocket, that you need to qualify for SSI or Medi-Cal, such as group homes. There's a lot of group homes that are private pay out there in California, but you still have to qualify for SSI and Medi-Cal in order to even be eligible for placement in one of those group homes. So, and the other thing about a special needs trust is it's really not that restrictive. You can distribute things for anything you might need. The big restriction is you're not supposed to distribute cash to the beneficiary, to the disabled person, which in a lot of cases can be a really good idea to not distribute cash. But you can give the child something called a TrueLink card or a Visa card, so that there's a lot of flexibility with how they spend things. Nowadays, especially with COVID, a lot of us don't use cash that much anyways. And we found that, we can get along okay. So the special needs trust really isn't that restrictive in my mind. And it provides the structure that this disabled person, even from a wealthy family, might need. So that's 9 times out of 10, that's where we usually end up.
What about those, and you did mention it a moment ago, but what about those who would be critical, saying, well, gosh, you have all this wealth. How dare you try and access public assistance?
Well, I have to say the public assistance, first of all, isn't that good. So you're not super draining. And in my opinion, you're getting an income stream of not even $1,000 a month, and that's to cover your room and board. I mean, it was set in the 1980s. It wasn't indexed for inflation. That number is way too low, especially in more expensive areas. And can you imagine living on $1,000 a month to pay for your food and housing? Yeah. The bigger deal is once you get $1 of that income stream of SSI, you automatically qualify for Medi-Cal, which is California's version of the federal Medicaid system. And having health insurance is essential. I mean, I would rather, not to get into politics, but I would rather all of us have Medicare. I want Medicare. I think it makes perfect sense. But right now, unfortunately, healthcare is tied to employment. And if somebody can't work and support themselves, like a disabled person, they're not getting an income stream and they're not getting health insurance. How else are they supposed to get health insurance? And Medi-Cal pays for a lot of things like prescription drug costs, long-term care. that other programs may not pay for, other health insurance programs. And this is what's allowed in the law. They recognize that some kids have some extreme needs, and they will only get by with both, with the money in their special needs trust and with the public benefits that they qualify for.
And as we're looking forward, looking out with the current administration, and there's a lot of tax proposals on the table. We'll see what actually happens. But do you see any changes that those who are considering doing some estate planning should consider doing in the year 2021 versus later?
Wow. I have to say, Esther, I was really good at predicting what would happen with taxes up until 2020. When my crystal ball got really hazy. I was wrong on two things. So it's just so hard to predict the future. But if I were going to put it out there, and, hopefully this doesn't come back to haunt me later. So the estate tax exemption is an interesting one because right now that's at $11.7 million per person. And it's adjusted for inflation, but then it drops in 2026. It automatically drops down to about $6.5 million per person. That's scheduled to happen without any interference. Under the Trump tax cuts, the individual tax cuts, which was the doubling of the estate tax exemption, only lasted for 10 years. It then sunsetted in 2026. So that's going to happen no matter what. Whether that happens early, that remains to be seen. What Biden had said before is that he wants the estate tax exemption to return to Obama level amounts. And that is it was set under Obama at 5 million indexed for inflation. So that would be about 6 or 6.5 million now. So I don't see it dropping to lower than 6 million. I know that, Bernie Sanders had proposed 3.5 million. I don't think that there's enough support for that. I think the scarier thing that's on the table are capital gains taxes. So if you're familiar with this, so let's say I buy some really simple example. I buy some stock for $1 and the value goes up to $10 and then I sell it. So the government wants to tax the increase in the value, and that's the capital gains tax. First of all, they're talking about increasing the percentage of the capital gains tax, but I think more difficult for estate planners is that they're talking about getting rid of the step up in basis upon a person's death. So if I have the dollar of stock and it goes up to $10 and then I die and my husband inherits it, he gets it as if he had bought it for $10. And he could turn around and sell it for $10 and there'd be no capital gains tax. That's current law. But what they're proposing is maybe limiting that step up in the cost basis at a death to maybe $1 million, and anything over that, you have to pay from the original purchase price of $1. So that's going to be a nightmare to implement for estate planners, because who knows how much that house was purchased for in 1970, keeping track of everything. But I do know there's a big deficit and debt, and we have to address it. So it's going to come from somewhere.
I know. I hope the same thing. I hope the step up does not go away, because it's so difficult for people to keep records and to know. I mean, you've been through estate administration. I've been from my area of the financial world, have been through it with clients too. And it's just helping continue to gather the information that's needed. And so many, it's just impossible to go back. And so I'm really nervous about that too. So anything that you would recommend people consider given these unknowns?
Oh, boy. Well, the challenge is if you guess wrong and you do all this planning and then it turns out it never happened, like that's what happened in, when was it, 2012? Everybody did all of this crazy gifting thinking that the estate tax exemption was going to drop down to $1 million. And then it was set at 5 million. It was like, surprise, and then people kind of wanted to undo those gifts. So until we have more information, I wouldn't really recommend, rushing into anything, but everybody has their acceptable anxiety level, what you can live with and what you can't. I just hate for people to be hasty. The one other thing that I'm keeping an eye on is Senate Bill 668. And so that's in California. for Prop 19. It's trying to extend the implementation date of Prop 19 to 2 years from now. So we have a bit more time to do parent-child transfers that qualify for that Prop 13 exemption. And that because that was really limited under Prop 19. So I'm keeping an eye out for that. There's no guarantee it can happen. And otherwise, if it doesn't get passed, the opportunities are already diminished for being able to pass your house along to your child and avoid property taxes. So that's more on the state level. But I think it's especially important for us in California who deal a lot with property taxes.
Yeah, a lot with the high value of the real estate and what that means.
Yes.
In terms of inheritance. Well, as you all can tell, Ellen has a lot of information and good suggestions and a great, great professional consultant on what we call your brain trust, those group of trusted professionals to help you stay and your family stay financially stable and successful for a long, long time. Ellen, if people needed to reach you, how could they connect with you?
So probably the best way to reach me is to reach out to my office. And also you can look at my website, which is cookmanlaw.com. Not too hard. And the number for our office is 650-690-2571. You'll probably speak with Wendy, my amazing intake coordinator. You'll love her. She can help find a time on the calendar. We also like to have people kind of describe what's going on, because if it's something that we can help with, we can set up a time. And if not, we have a lot of people who we can refer people to. So we don't do everything, but we want to make sure that people are taken care of. I have a lot of my clients will come to me and they kind of see me as their lawyer. I'm like their family lawyer.
Right.
And so they say, I have this tenant issue. Can you help me with it? I say, well, no, I don't do that, but I'm happy to send you to so-and-so,
Right.
And one thing that you said, Esther, that I think is so important is I totally agree. Everybody needs a brain trust where we have at least a financial advisor, a CPA, and estate planning attorney all working together. So we make sure that nothing falls through the cracks, that these trusts are funded at the appropriate time, that you get the right tax ID number, all of these details. I found that a lot of my clients don't really understand, and that's fine. They're not in this field, but they don't understand what's the difference between a financial planner and a financial advisor and an estate planner, So being able to help people to understand the team that they need and then set it up. I love working with other professionals. That's one thing that makes this field so much fun.
It is great. And it's like we all can circle around with great care around the client and make sure, because they understand well in their meeting. And then if you ask a day later or an hour later, it's like, oh, no. So it's like when we can all connect and help plug in and support them, it's incredibly, incredibly just wonderful synergy. So Ellen, thank you so much for sharing with us today. I feel like we could talk for another hour, but we will not do that today, but I hope we can talk again in the future.
Thank you so much, Esther. This was really a pleasure.
Esther, I just say it every time. You bring on amazing guests. Ellen, thank you so much. I could hear your passion through the microphone big time for what you do for your families. And I love that. I love that fact about you. Esther does the same thing. So Esther, thank you for bringing her on the show. Ellen, of course, thanks again for being here. And our last thank you goes to you, the listening audience. Thank you so much for tuning in and listening to the Women in Wealth podcast with Esther Szabo. If you have not subscribed to the podcast yet, please click the subscribe now button below. This way, when Esther comes out with a new podcast, it'll show up directly on your listening device. This makes it much easier to share these podcasts with your friends and family. Again, thank you so much for listening today. For everyone at Gates Pass Advisors, this is Eric Johnson reminding you to live your best day every day. And we'll see you next time.
Thank you for listening to the Women and Wealth podcast. Be sure to subscribe to the podcast so you receive notifications of new podcasts as they become available. Check out the website at www.gatespassadvisors.com for more information. This content is developed from sources believed to be providing accurate information. The information in this material is not intended as tax or legal advice. Please consult legal or tax professionals for specific information regarding your individual situation. The opinions expressed and material provided are for general information and should not be considered a solicitation for the purchase or sale of any security.